Hi everybody, welcome to Saturday Live at the Backyard Bird Center. Doing a program today requested off the internet about aberrant coloration in birds. So whenever I teach classes on bird identification, or when people come in and are trying to get us to identify a bird for them they've seen, the first thing they start describing is color. And I have always taught that color is one of the worst things to use when you're trying to identify a bird. We all know, maybe we are familiar with that a lot of color differentiations in birds with, a male is not the same color as a female. A young bird will have a different coloration than it when it becomes an adult. Even adult birds, winter plumages can be different than the breeding plumages. So color can really be deceiving in birds. And today, what we're talking about are those circumstances that are even more rare, but add to the complication to identifying birds. So everybody is familiar with the term albinism, and they know that it means, when you see a very white animal, then that's what the assumption is it's an albino. The term albinism or albino means total lack of pigment. An individual, whether it's a deer or a mouse or a bird, is born with no pigmentation in it. So it does not have any of the colors that we associate with that individual. The bird on the screen is a house sparrow. It is a true albinism, because we're going to talk about true albinism here. But we know this bird is a true albino because its legs are pink, its bill is pink, its feathers are pink, its eyes are. There's no pigment anywhere in this bird. It is a rare condition, but we see it most frequently in birds that are species that are very numerous, like house sparrows. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit to show you how you can help to identify that bird. He's hanging out with a bunch of house sparrows. It's shaped like a house sparrow. It's hanging out with a bunch of house sparrows. So yeah, the conclusion was pretty easy that this was an albino house sparrow. Had it been by itself, it would have been a much harder identification. So we have to look at bill shape and the culmen, the curvature of the bill, at the bottom lower bill, that kind of thing whenever we're identifying hard to identify birds. But in this case, it's pretty easy just because he was hanging around with. But we see albinism in robins and blackbirds and birds that are more common. Now, a few years ago, 2012, as a matter of fact, we had this incredible bird show up at a feeder over in 2012, I believe, in August, that we had this show up at a customer's feeder over in Lake Wacomas. This is a true albino ruby-throated hummingbird. When I did research on this bird, once we had gone over and photographed it and contacted the experts who study ruby-throated hummingbirds, they told me at the time there were fewer than 100 documented true ruby-throated albino hummingbirds ever. So this was, one of only 100 birds ever identified as a true albino ruby-throated, which is incredibly rare. And when you think of the total number of ruby-throated hummingbirds there are in our country at any one time. So pink bill, pink eyes, pink feet. I show you a picture that fooled us a bit. Let's get to it. I'm sorry, this one. Okay. Now look, whenever we were photographing it, we were seeing the black in this bird. See the black around, if you can see that here and here, and we see some black up here. And when I questioned the experts about it, they said, well, what's deceiving is the skin of that albino hummingbird is actually black. And what you're seeing is the black from the skin shining through in places when the feathers are moved. But no, that is still true ruby-throated, albino ruby-throated hummingbird, which was really, really cool. Now, are all white birds albinos? Well, no, not necessarily. Here's another one that, wrong way. This one, okay. This bird was sent in, the picture was sent in, and the question was, is this an albino ruby-throated hummingbird? and it is a very, very pale ruby-throated hummingbird, no doubt. But the first thing you notice is the bill is black. So the bill being black, it cannot be a true albino. So what is this bird? This bird has a condition called Leucism. So another aberrant coloration, another genetic misfit, and that means a shortage of pigment, not a total absence like an albino. Leucism is a shortage of pigment. So this is a very pale individual. It's you can still see the greenish tone to the bird, but it's very, very light. And so this is a bird that is showing Leucism. Now, Leucism can show itself in many different ways. And whenever I was flipping through here, like this bird. This is a house finch that has Leucism. And while it isn't all over pale like that hummingbird was, this is a more patchiness that we see in individuals. Hunters are familiar with deer that can be patchy white and brown whenever they see them. That is Leucism. It's incorrectly identified or called partial albinism. That is not what it is. It's its own condition, and it can show itself in many ways. The first time I ever saw it was in college on a field trip, and there was a grackle, a boat-tailed grackle among a bunch of grackle along the coast of North Carolina, and it had one white wing. So one wing was totally white, and the rest of the bird was black like it was supposed to be. And that was my first education in that Leucism by our professor on that field trip. So we see it in lots of different ways. It can be one or two white feathers. It can be a lot of white feathers. I'm going to cut another picture here. This is a red-tailed hawk that is leucistic, and it is almost all white.
Zoom in a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this bird, you can still see, it is not behaving. Come on, be nice. All right. That bird, you can see that there's different colors. There's blacks and browns, feathers here and there, which in the sear, which is above the bill's black, can't be an albino, but a very, very light individual. So we have lots of different ways that Leucism shows up. Here's a pine siskin that our customer sent in a while back that was leucistic. The question was raised. You can see that bird. You can actually still see the yellow in the wing of a pine siskin and some dark, but mainly white. So, and it's an interesting condition. So if albino is a total lack of pigment, Leucism is a shortage of pigment, what is too much pigment? Well, that condition is called melanism. And melanism, literally, we don't get a lot of pictures of birds that are melanistic because it goes unnoticed, I think, more than anything, because they just appear, for some reason, that white jumps out at us, but a dark individual of a species like a really dark robin, instead of having the nice orange breast, it'll be almost washed in a darker color. People don't think that as strange as they do whenever something's really white. But melanism is a condition where an individual body produces too much pigment, and so they come across as very dark. And this is a red-tailed hawk, a young red-tailed hawk that is melanistic. It is very dark. So that's where we get most of our pictures of dark individuals or birds of prey. But it exists in all birds. So we've got albinism, Leucism, and Melanism, aberrant colorations in birds. So again, that was a suggestion from the internet. If you've got any ideas for future programs, send them in. Questions about what we talked about today, give us a call, shoot us an email. We thank you for your support, and until then, come by and let's talk birds.